After the quiet ceremony in the greenhouse, Lyra and Claire returned to their shared quarters, not as strangers bound by politics, but as two people choosing to walk the same path. The station hummed around them, its rhythm steady, its lights warm. For the first time, Lyra did not feel like an exile. She felt like someone who belonged. In the days that followed, their lives settled into a gentle routine. Claire worked her shifts in engineering, her hands always busy with tools or data pads. Lyra, no longer confined to ceremonial duties, began to explore the station with new eyes. She visited the hydroponic bays, where Claire introduced her to tomatoes still warm from the sun lamps. She sat with the station's children during story hour, listening as they giggled over tales of space dragons and robot dogs. She even helped the botanist prune the lemon trees, her careful fingers learning the language of leaves and stems. One evening, Claire came home with flour dusting her cheeks and a wide grin. "I tried baking bread," she said, holding up a lopsided loaf. "It's not great." Lyra took it, sniffed, then broke off a piece. It was dense, slightly burnt, but oddly sweet. She chewed slowly, then nodded. "It is good," Claire laughed. "You don't have to lie. I am not lying," Lyra said. "It is the first bread I have ever tasted. That makes it precious." Claire's smile softened. "You see the best in things, don't you?" "Only when it is there to be seen," Lyra replied. As weeks passed, they began to blend their worlds. Lyra taught Claire how to listen to silence, not as emptiness but as a space where understanding could grow. Claire, in turn, showed Lyra how humans used small acts, making tea, sharing a blanket, humming while working, as quiet ways of saying "I care." One night, during a station-wide power fluctuation, the lights flickered and died. Emergency red glow filled the corridors. Lyra, startled by the sudden dark, froze in the hallway. Among the Xanthari, darkness meant danger. No light, no song, no connection. Claire found her there, standing rigid against the wall. Without a word, she took Lyra's hand and led her back to their room. She lit a single candle, its flame small but steady. "You okay?" Claire asked softly. Lyra nodded, but her fingers still trembled. On Xanthara, the night sky always glowed with twin moons and sky rivers. True dark was rare, and feared. Claire sat beside her on the bed. "Want to hear a story my grandma used to tell me during blackouts?" Lyra nodded again. Claire spoke of fireflies in summer fields, of how they blinked not in fear, but to find each other in the dark. She said that sometimes the most important light isn't the brightest. It's the one that waits for you. Lyra leaned her head on Claire's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to thank me," Claire said. "Just stay," and Lyra did. Their bond deepened not through grand declarations, but through shared moments, mending a broken comms unit together, watching meteor showers from the observation deck, arguing playfully over whether stars or crystals were more beautiful. Lyra began to laugh, soft, rare sounds that surprised even her. Claire started leaving little notes in Lyra's pockets, a sketch of a flower, a line of poetry, a reminder that the greenhouse jasmine was blooming again. Then, a message arrived from Xanthara. It came through the diplomatic channel sealed with the council's sigil. Lyra's hands shook as she opened it. The elders had heard rumors of her happiness. They were not pleased. A Xanthari daughter, they wrote, should not find comfort in human ways. They demanded she return home for re-education, to realign with tradition. Lyra read the message 3 times. Each word felt like a stone in her chest. Claire found her sitting on the floor of their room, the data pad in her lap. "Bad news?" Claire asked, kneeling beside her. Lyra showed her the message. "If I go back, they will erase what I have become. They will make me forget." Claire was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You don't have to go, but my people, your people made you a tool." Claire said gently, "You are not a tool. You are Lyra, and you get to choose." Lyra looked at her, eyes glistening. "What if I choose wrong?" "You won't," Claire said, "because you're choosing with your heart, not fear." That night, Lyra composed her reply. She wrote not as a daughter of nobility, but as herself. She thanked the council for her upbringing, but declared that her path now lay among the stars, not as a symbol of peace, but as a person who had found peace. She would not return. When she sent the message, a strange calm settled over her. It was not defiance. It was clarity. Days later, another transmission arrived, not from the council, but from her younger sister, Neela. The message was private, encrypted, Nyla wrote that many on Zenthera whispered of Lyra's choice. Some called her traitor. Others called her brave. Nyla herself dreamed of seeing Earth's oceans. She ended with a simple line. "You showed me that kindness can be stronger than tradition." Lyra cried then, not from sorrow, but from hope. Meanwhile, life on the station continued. Claire was promoted to chief engineer, and Lyra began assisting in xenobiology, using her knowledge of Zentheri flora to help grow hybrid crops that could feed more people. They adopted a small scruffy station cat named Comet, who slept curled between them every night. One evening, as they sat on the greenhouse bench beneath the lemon tree, Claire turned to Lyra. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "Your home." Lyra thought for a moment. "I miss the songs, the light rivers. But home isn't just a place, it's who you're with." Claire smiled. "So, we're home, yes," Lyra said, taking her hand. "We are outside, the stars burned as they always had, cold, distant, eternal. But inside the greenhouse, warmed by shared breath and quiet love, two women had built something new. Not a treaty, not a duty, but a life chosen freely, one kind act at a time. And in that life, Lyra found not just survival but joy, not just peace but belonging. She had come fearing the human she was forced to marry, but in Claire's steady kindness she had found something far more powerful than fear. She had found herself. On the edge of known space, where the stars burned cold and distant, Lyra stood alone in the docking bay of Station Omega-9. Her silver skin caught the harsh artificial light, glinting like polished metal. Her long fingers twisted the hem of her ceremonial robe, the fabric stiff and unfamiliar. She was a daughter of the Zenthari, a proud ancient species whose minds could touch one another across silence, whose songs could shape crystal and calm storms. But here, among the clanging pipes and humming engines of a human station, she felt hollow. The Zenthari Council had made their choice. After the war with the Krell Hive, a war that left their fleets shattered and their world scorched, they needed allies. Earth's united colonies offered aid, but at a price, a bond of marriage between Lyra and a human. Not a warrior, not a leader, but an engineer named Claire. The name meant nothing to Lyra. Humans were loud, messy, and ruled by emotions they barely understood. Worse, they could not share thoughts without speaking. To Lyra, that was like living in darkness. She had begged the council to choose another. She had argued, pleaded, even knelt in the chamber of echoes until her knees ached. But tradition demanded sacrifice, and Lyra was the last unwed daughter of a noble bloodline. So she came, not as a bride, but as a prisoner of peace. When Claire arrived, Lyra expected bluster or pity. Instead, she saw a woman in a worn blue jumpsuit, her brown hair tied back with a frayed band, her boots scuffed from years of hard work. She carried a small box wrapped in faded cloth. "Hi," Claire said, her voice calm, not too loud. "I know this isn't what either of us wanted, but I brought you something." Lyra did not answer. She kept her eyes down, her antennae drooping in silent refusal. Among her people, silence before a forced bond was a sign of mourning. Claire placed the box on a nearby crate and stepped back. "I read about your customs. You honor quiet before joining, so I'll give you space. Just open it when you're ready." Then she turned and walked away, her footsteps soft against the metal floor. Lyra waited until the corridor was empty. Only then did she approach the box. Inside, nestled in soft gray fabric, was a wooden flute. It was plain, uncarved, but smooth to the touch. A small note lay beneath it. "My grandmother made this. She said music speaks when words fail." That night, in her assigned quarters, a small room with a narrow bed and a window showing the endless black, Lyra held the flute. She had not played since the day her homeworld fell silent under Krell bombardment. Her fingers trembled as she raised it to her lips. The first note was weak, shaky, but the second was stronger. By the third, the sound filled the room, curling around the walls like smoke, carrying memories of home, of loss, of a life she thought she'd never reclaim. For the first time in months, she did not feel alone. Over the next few days, Claire kept her distance. She worked long shifts deep in the station's core, fixing broken systems and rerouting power lines. Lyra watched her from afar, curious despite herself. She saw Claire help a young technician carry heavy tools, even though her own arms were bruised from a fall. She saw her stay late to repair a broken air filter in the nursery module, refusing payment. Once Lyra even saw her sit with an old botanist who had lost contact with her family on Mars, just listening, saying nothing for nearly an hour. Humans were not what the Zenthari had taught her. One afternoon, during a routine inspection, alarms blared through Sector 7. A coolant pipe had ruptured. Steam hissed from the walls and the floor grew slick with freezing liquid. Crew members scrambled to shut down the system, but the main valve was jammed. Lyra, trained in emergency response, ran toward the chaos. She found Claire already inside the chamber, wrestling with the valve, her face streaked with sweat and grime. "Get out," Claire shouted over the roar of escaping gas. "It's unstable." Lyra ignored her. She moved beside Claire, bracing her slender frame against the metal housing. With a strength that surprised even herself, she held the valve steady while Claire twisted the release lever. Their hands brushed, human warmth against Xanthari coolness, and for a heartbeat the noise faded. When the leak stopped, they stood in the dripping silence, breathing hard. "Why did you stay?" Lyra asked, her voice low. "Because you were helping," Claire said, wiping her forehead with her sleeve. "And because I wanted to see you choose to be here, not because you had to." Lyra looked away, but something inside her shifted. It was not the cold logic of duty. It was something warmer, quieter, like the first note of a new song. After that, they began to talk. Not much at first, just passing greetings in the corridor, shared glances in the mess hall. Then one evening, Claire invited Lyra to join her for a meal. They sat at a corner table, eating rehydrated stew and stale bread. "You don't have to pretend," Lyra said suddenly. "I know this marriage is just for the treaty." Claire set down her spoon. "I'm not pretending. I don't want you to suffer because of politics. If you'd rather live apart, we can. I won't force anything." Lyra studied her face. There was no deception there, only honesty, raw and simple. "You are different from what I expected," Lyra admitted. Claire smiled faintly. "So are you." They began to meet regularly after that. Claire showed Lyra how the station worked. The spinning rings that created gravity, the solar arrays that drank starlight, the hydroponic gardens that grew real vegetables. In return, Lyra taught Claire about Xanthari star maps, how their ancestors navigated by singing to the constellations. One night, Claire brought Lyra to the observation deck. The station hung in the void, a tiny speck against the swirl of the Andromeda galaxy. "It's beautiful," Lyra whispered. "Earth's not far from here," Claire said softly. "One day, if you want, I could show you oceans, mountains, trees that turn gold in the fall." Lyra turned to her. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because kindness doesn't need a reason," Claire replied. Those words stayed with Lyra long after they returned to their quarters. She had been taught that alliances were built on power, not compassion. But Claire offered neither demands nor expectations. Only space, only choice. As the days passed, Lyra found herself looking forward to their talks. She noticed how Claire always saved the last piece of fruit for her, how she remembered Lyra disliked the taste of synthetic coffee, how she never asked about Xanthari's secrets or military plans. Slowly, the dread that had wrapped around Lyra's heart began to loosen. The marriage ceremony was scheduled in 10 days. Lyra had assumed it would be a cold, formal event in front of officials and cameras, but Claire had other ideas. On the morning of the ceremony, Claire met Lyra outside the greenhouse, a small dome filled with real earth plants, a rare luxury on the station. "I asked the botanist if we could use this place," Claire said, her voice gentle. "It's not Xanthara, but it's alive. And it's quiet." There were no guests, no speeches, just the two of them, standing among blooming jasmine and rustling ferns, sunlight filtering through the glass above. "You don't have to say yes," Claire said, holding out her hand. "This isn't about the treaty anymore. It's about us. If you want to walk away, I'll understand." Lyra looked at Claire's hand, calloused, steady, kind. She thought of the flute, the shared silence, the way Claire had never once treated her like a prize or a pawn. Slowly, Lyra placed her hand in Claire's. "I stay," she said, and in that moment the weight of exile lifted, not because she had found home, but because she had found someone who made her feel seen, not as a symbol, but as herself. Months passed, and the bond between Lyra and Claire grew like the vines in the greenhouse, strong, quiet, and full of life. They no longer thought of themselves as alien and human, Xanthari and earthborn. They were simply partners, building a life in the hum of Station Omega 9. Lyra helped design a new air filtration system using Xanthari biocrystals that purified the air and released calming pheromones. Claire, in turn, modified the station's music system to play Lyra's flute melodies during quiet hours, so the whole crew could hear the soft, haunting notes that once only filled their room. But peace, even the kind built on kindness, is never untested. One day, a distress signal crackled through the comms. A Xanthari scout ship, damaged and drifting near the Krell border. The message was faint, but Lyra recognized the voice. It was Kyle, her former betrothed, the one the Council had chosen before the war changed everything. He had been sent on a solo mission and now his ship was failing. Lyra's hands went cold. She had not spoken to Kale since the day she left Xanthara. He had believed in duty above all else. He would not understand her choice to stay with a human. Claire saw the worry in her eyes. "You know him," Claire said, not a question. "He was to be my husband," Lyra admitted. "Before the treaty." Claire nodded slowly. "Do you want to help him?" "Yes," Lyra said without hesitation, "but I fear what he will say when he sees me." "With you." Claire squeezed her hand. "Then we'll face it together." They convinced Station Command to send a rescue shuttle. Claire piloted it herself with Lyra beside her. When they reached the damaged vessel, they found Kale weak but alive, his silver skin dull from oxygen loss. He blinked in confusion when he saw Lyra, and then his eyes narrowed at the sight of Claire. "You brought a human?" he said, his voice sharp with disbelief. "She saved your life," Lyra replied evenly. Kale refused to speak during the return trip. Back on the station, he was given medical care, but he kept his distance. Days passed. Then one evening he appeared at the greenhouse door. "I need to speak with you," he said to Lyra. Claire started to step back, but Lyra caught her wrist. "Stay." They sat on the bench beneath the lemon tree, the same place where Lyra had chosen to stay. Kale looked around, his expression unreadable. "You live like this," he said, "among plants and humans and..." Silence. "I live with kindness," Lyra said. "Something our people have forgotten." Kale was quiet. Then he spoke softly. "The Council is changing. Your message..." It stirred unrest. "Some say we have grown too rigid. Others say you have betrayed us, and you," Lyra asked. "What do you say?" "I say I do not understand," Kale admitted. "But I saw your eyes when you looked at her. It was not duty, it was something else." "Love," Claire said gently. Kale flinched at the word but did not deny it. After a long pause he stood. "I will return to Xanthara. I will tell them what I saw. Not just a human station, but a home." When he left, Lyra felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. The past was not erased, but it no longer held her. Weeks later, another message arrived, this time from the Council itself. It was not a command, but a request. They had heard of the biocrystal filters, of the hybrid crops, of the peace that thrived not through force but through shared work. They asked if Lyra would be willing to share her knowledge with Xanthari scientists. Lyra looked at Claire. "What do you think?" "I think you should say yes," Claire said, "but only if they come here." "On your terms," so Lyra agreed, but only if the Xanthari delegation came to Station Omega-9, not the other way around. To her surprise, they accepted. The delegation arrived 3 months later. 5 Xanthari elders, their robes shimmering with ancient symbols, stepped onto the station with stiff posture and guarded minds. They expected cold metal and chaos. Instead, they found order, greenery, and quiet cooperation. Lyra greeted them not in ceremonial robes, but in a simple tunic, her hair loose, her hand resting in Claire's. "This is my wife," Lyra said. The elders exchanged glances. One elder Voss stepped forward. "You have changed, child." "I have grown," Lyra corrected gently. Over the next week, Lyra showed them her work. The crystal filters, the food gardens, the music system that soothed stressed minds. She introduced them to Claire, not as a human engineer, but as her partner in every sense. At first, the elders were distant. But slowly, they began to ask questions. How did the crystals bond with human tech? How did 2 such different species share thoughts without telepathy? Claire answered with patience. "We listen," she said. "Really listen. Not just to words, but to silence, to actions, to care." On their last night, Elder Voss asked to speak with Lyra alone. They stood in the observation deck, stars stretching endlessly before them. "You have built something here," he said. "Not just a life, but a bridge." "I did not mean to," Lyra said. "I only wanted to be seen." Perhaps that is how all bridges begin, Voss mused, with one person daring to be known. When the delegation left, they took more than data pads and schematics. They took stories. Stories of kindness, of choice, of a Xanthari woman who found home not in returning, but in staying. After they were gone, Lyra and Claire stood together in the greenhouse, Comet the cat purring at their feet. "Do you think it will change anything?" Lyra asked. "Maybe not everything," Claire said, "but something. And sometimes something is enough." Lyra leaned her head on Claire's shoulder. "I used to think strength was in silence and duty. Now I know it is in showing up, day after day, with an open heart." Claire kissed the top of her head. "And I used to think love had to be loud. Now I know it's in the quiet moments like this." Outside, the stars burned as they always had. But inside, two hearts beat in rhythm. Not because the universe demanded it, but because they chose it. And in that choice, they had not only saved each other, they had begun to heal two worlds. Seasons turned, even in the endless void of space. On Station Omega 9, time was marked not by falling leaves or snow, but by the rhythm of supply ships, the bloom of greenhouse flowers, and the quiet milestones shared between Lyra and Claire. They celebrated their first year together with a simple dinner. Real potatoes grown in the hydroponic bay, roasted with herbs, and a cake Claire baked that only leaned slightly to the left. Comet the cat stole a bite and sneezed, making them both laugh until tears gathered in the corners of their eyes. But life, even when peaceful, carries echoes of the past. One morning, a priority message arrived from Earth Command. It was not about war or diplomacy. It was personal. Claire's mother, back on Mars Colony, was ill. Not critically, but her heart was weakening, and she had asked to see her daughter one last time. Claire read the message 3 times, her hand steady but her eyes distant. Lyra watched her from across the room, sensing the weight settling on her shoulders. "You should go," Lyra said softly. Claire looked up. "It's a 3-week trip each way. You'd be alone here." "I have been alone before," Lyra said, "but you have never left your mother." "Go. I will be here when you return." Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Thank you." Preparations began. Lyra helped pack Claire's bag, folding clothes with care, tucking in a small crystal from Xanthera that pulsed faintly with warmth, a gift to ease long nights. The night before departure, they sat on the greenhouse bench, Comet curled in Lyra's lap. "What if she doesn't understand us?" Claire said suddenly. "My mother. She's old-fashioned. She might not accept you." Lyra placed a hand over Claire's. "Then she will see how you look at me, and she will understand." Claire smiled, but her eyes were wet. "I hope so." The next day, Lyra walked Claire to the shuttle bay. They did not say much. Words were not needed. They held each other for a long moment, foreheads touching in the Xanthari way. Then Claire boarded the ship and left. The station felt quieter without her. Lyra kept busy, tending the gardens, assisting in engineering, even teaching a few crew members simple flute songs. But at night, the bed felt too large, the silence too deep. 3 weeks passed. Then 4. No messages came. Worry began to coil in Lyra's chest like a cold vine. On the 28th day, the shuttle returned. Lyra was in the greenhouse, pruning jasmine, when she saw Claire walking down the corridor. She looked tired, her clothes wrinkled, but her eyes lit up when she saw Lyra. They met halfway. Claire dropped her bag and pulled Lyra into a tight embrace. "She knows," Claire whispered. "She saw your picture. She saw how I spoke of you. And she said she just wants me to be happy." Lyra held her tighter. "And are you?" "Yes," Claire said. "More than I ever thought possible." Life settled again, but something had shifted. Claire spoke more often of Earth, of oceans, of forests, of small towns where people knew each other's names. One evening, as they watched a meteor shower from the observation deck, she turned to Lyra. "What if we went there?" she said. "Not just me. Us. To Earth. To build a home, not on a station but on solid ground." Lyra looked at her surprised. "You would leave the station?" "Only if you come with me," Claire said. "I don't want a home without you in it." Lyra thought of Xanthera, of its singing crystals and sky rivers. She would never live there again. But Earth. Earth was not her enemy. It was Claire's heart, and in many ways it had become hers too. "Yes," Lyra said. "I would like to see your oceans." Plans began slowly. They saved credits, filed transfer requests, and even started learning about Earth's weather, something Lyra found both fascinating and terrifying. Rain, Claire explained, was water falling from the sky. "You mean the sky cries?" Lyra said. Claire laughed. "Sometimes. But mostly, it just waters the trees." As they prepared, news came from Zenthara again. A new generation of young Zenthari, inspired by Lyra's story, had begun reaching out to human colonies. Some even enrolled in joint science programs. The old ways were not gone, but they were bending, like a tree in the wind, not breaking but growing in a new direction. Then, one day, a small package arrived for Lyra. Inside was a seedling from Zenthara, a sky-bloom sapling, its leaves faintly glowing. A note read, "Plant it where kindness grows." Lyra and Claire planted it in a special pot in the greenhouse near the lemon tree. They watered it together, watching as its soft light pulsed in time with the station's night cycle. The day finally came. Their transfer was approved. They packed their lives into 2 crates: tools, books, the wooden flute, the glowing sapling, and Comet, now grumpy but resigned to space travel. As they boarded the transport ship bound for Earth, Lyra looked back at Station Omega 91 last time. It had been her prison, then her refuge, then her home. Now, it was a beginning. Claire took her hand. "Ready?" Lyra nodded. "Ready." The ship lifted off, carrying them toward a blue-green world wrapped in clouds. Below, oceans stretched wide, mountains rose tall, and forests whispered in the wind. It was not Zenthara, but it was full of life. Full of chance. When they landed in a small coastal town, Claire led Lyra to a little house with a garden and a view of the sea. The first night, they sat on the porch, listening to the waves. "It sounds like singing," Lyra said. Claire leaned against her. "Maybe it is." In the weeks that followed, they built their life. Lyra planted the sky bloom in the garden, where it glowed softly at dusk. Claire fixed the old porch swing. Neighbors brought pies and waved hello. Comet chased butterflies and napped in sunbeams. Lyra still missed her world, but she no longer grieved it. Because here, with Claire, she had not lost herself. She had found a new way to be. And in the quiet moments, making tea, walking the shore, sharing silence under a sky full of stars, she knew she had not just survived the marriage she dreaded, she had thrived in the love she chose. Life on Earth settled into a gentle rhythm for Lyra and Claire. Their small house by the sea became a place of peace, filled with the sound of waves, the rustle of the sky bloom's glowing leaves, and Comet's soft purrs. Lyra learned to love the rain, not as a strange sky cry, but as a cool kiss on her silver skin. She walked barefoot on wet grass, watched clouds shapeshift above the hills, and even tried her hand at baking, though her loaves still leaned more than Claire's ever did. But peace, no matter how deep, is never the end of a story. One afternoon, while tending the garden, Lyra received a message from Station Omega 9. It was from the botanist, now retired but still tending the greenhouse. A young Zenthari woman had arrived alone, seeking refuge. She had fled her homeworld after refusing an arranged bond, just as Lyra once had. She carried only a small pack and a flute carved from memory crystal. Her name was Nyla, Lyra's younger sister. Lyra's breath caught. She had not seen Nyla since she left Zenthara. In their last message, Nyla had spoken of dreams and doubt. Now she had acted on them. Claire saw the look on Lyra's face and knew. "You want to go to her?" "I must," Lyra said. "She is alone." "Then we go together," Claire said without hesitation. They booked passage on the next transport. Comet, now older and less fond of travel, stayed behind with a kind neighbor who promised to feed him extra tuna. The journey back to the station felt different this time, not as a prisoner or a stranger, but as someone returning to a place that had once saved her. When they arrived, Nyla stood in the greenhouse, her silver skin dull with exhaustion, her eyes wide with fear. She looked so young, so much like Lyra had been. "You came," Nyla whispered when she saw Lyra. "Of course I came," Lyra said, pulling her into a tight embrace. Later, over tea brewed from earth herbs, Nyla told her story. The council had grown stricter, not kinder. Tradition was now law and dissent was punished with silence, a fate worse than exile for telepathic beings. Nyla had hidden on a cargo freighter, surviving on ration bars and hope, all the way to Omega-9. I did not know where else to go, she admitted, her voice trembling. I remembered your letters. I remembered? Kindness. Lyra looked at Claire, who sat quietly listening. Then she turned back to Nyla. You are not alone. You never were. Over the next few days, Lyra and Claire helped Nyla adjust. They showed her how to speak without shame, how to ask for help, how to trust silence that was not punishment but peace. Nyla was shy at first, but her eyes lit up when Claire taught her to bake bread, and she laughed, a real, bright sound, when Comet's recorded purrs played over the comms. But the past was not done with them. A Xanthari patrol ship arrived at the station's edge, demanding Nyla's return. The message was clear. She was a runaway, a disgrace, and her presence among humans was an insult to their honor. Station command was nervous. They did not want to break the fragile peace. Lyra stood before the council liaison, her posture calm but firm. My sister is not a criminal. She is a person, and she chooses to stay. The liaison, an elder named Torin, studied her. You have changed, Lyra of House Vera. You speak like a human. I speak like someone who has been seen, Lyra replied, and I will not let you take that from her. Claire stepped forward. She's under Earth protection now. If you try to take her by force, you break the treaty. Torin's eyes narrowed. This is not your concern, human, it is, Claire said simply, because she's family. The word hung in the air. Family. Not by blood alone, but by choice. Torin left without Nyla, but the threat remained. That night, the three of them sat in the greenhouse. Nyla was scared. What if they come back? They might, Lyra said. But we are ready. How? Nyla asked. By showing them that kindness is not weakness, Claire said. It's strength. In the weeks that followed, Lyra and Claire worked with station officials to grant Nyla asylum under United Colonies law. They gathered testimonies from crew members who had seen her kindness, her hard work, her gentle spirit. Even the old botanist spoke on her behalf. Meanwhile, Neela began to heal. She helped in the gardens, learned basic engineering from Claire, and even played the flute with Lyra under the stars. Slowly, her skin regained its shimmer. Slowly, she began to believe she deserved to be free. Then, unexpectedly, Elder Voss returned. He came not with a warship, but alone, in a small diplomatic vessel. He asked to speak with Lyra and Nyla. In the greenhouse beneath the lemon tree, Voss looked at both sisters. The council is divided, he said. Some call for war over this insult. Others say we have lost our way. He turned to Nyla. Why did you run? Because I wanted to choose, Nyla said, her voice steady now. Not just who to bond with, but who to be. Voss was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. Perhaps it is time our people learn to choose again. He did not take Nyla. Instead, he left with a proposal, a new exchange program, where young Xanthari could live among humans, not as hostages, but as students, as friends. When he was gone, Nyla cried, not from fear but from hope. Months later, Nyla decided to stay on the station, helping build the first Xanthari Human Learning Center. Lyra and Claire returned to Earth, but they visited often, bringing seeds, stories, and Comet, who now tolerated space travel for extra treats. Back in their seaside home, Lyra stood on the porch one evening, watching the sky bloom glow in the twilight. Claire joined her, slipping a hand into hers. You did it, Claire said softly. You changed everything. No, Lyra said. We did. And in that quiet moment, with the ocean singing below and stars waking above, they knew their story was not just about two people who found love. It was about how one act of true kindness, offered without demand, given without fear, could ripple across worlds, heal old wounds, and light the way for others to follow.